Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
What is up? Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast on a Monday today here. My name is Tom Dougherty, your host, which means this is the college football edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, which, as always, is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. All right, well, one more weekend passes along as we get through this month of August. Of course, right when we get finished with this month of August, we will have college football for you. Actually, there is going to be some lower level, I think Division 1, Division 2A, or Division 1 AA games that are going to come later in this month, like I think starting the 29th and 30th, and then the 31st. And then also we'll have, obviously, the big games on the 1st and the 2nd. Actually, we're going to have Saturday and Sunday. So plan that whole weekend, the first weekend of September, 1st and 2nd, we're going to have big college games. So we're going to have Saturday games and then Sunday games as well for those neutral field sites. And we're going to have two games back-to-back, Saturday, Sunday in Dallas at AT&T Stadium. The first one being the game between Auburn and Washington, and then the second game, I believe, is LSU Miami. So, yeah, I'm pretty. I always double check this stuff because I second guess myself, but I mean, I'm pretty darn sure that's what it is. Quickly before we go along here, I know this is a football show, college football show, but there's golf fans out there, right? One little golf. I'll have a little snippet. You have to tell me, even if you're not a golf fan, if you're a peripheral golf fan, there's a lot of golf fans down in the South and also around areas that have colleges, and also a lot of these guys have been to big colleges as well. Isn't golf better with Tiger Woods? Is it? I mean, come on. If you guys were watching what was happening in St. Louis this weekend, you got to tell yourself, even if you were upset with what happened back in the days where he was on ESPN for the wrong reasons and having his car smashed by his ex-wife, or whether it was a couple years ago or whether, I don't know, it was like a year and a half ago when he was found on the side of sitting in his car on the side of the road, but he's made his way back. You got to give the guy credit. And for those who are football fans, college football fans, you got golf fans. People thinking about golf is we go play it. You can go watch your Auburn Tigers early on a Saturday morning and go hit the links. There's a lot of golfers down there. One of the biggest tournaments in the world is down in Georgia. I mean, so we have there's probably a lot of fans out there who are both fans of college football and of golf and of Tiger or Brooks Koepka or whoever your favorite is. But I mean, this weekend was a pretty interesting seeing it. It was pretty awesome watching. And we're definitely excited for some more weekends of college football and of NFL football, as well as that was golf's final major this past weekend from Belle Reve in St. Louis, the PGA Championship. And congratulations to Brooks Koepka, the winner of this tournament, the PGA Championship, second major he's won this year after winning the U.S. Open back at Shinnecock Hills on Long Island. So, all right. We'll go back to football. It's a little snippet right there. Give my kudos to Tiger because that was quite a performance there. I mean, he was always the guy who said, "Oh, you got to hit finishing second," because he would always finish first. But let you guys know, this was his best final round ever in a major. He shot a 64, best final round ever in a major, because he's never actually won a tournament coming from behind. He's always been either tied or in the lead, and he's never had to really go after it in the final round, basically just not blow up. And he'd win, but now this was a chance for him to try and come from behind and win. Obviously, when Brooks Koepka is hitting the ball 350 yards down the middle of the fairway every time, it's going to be kind of difficult to beat. But definitely gave it a run and finished 2 shots back, 14 under for the tournament, and 16 under was the winning score for Koepka. All right. Back to, Thomas is on a sports show, but okay, well, there's golf fans out there. Just wanted to just give my little 2 cents, because it's basically what I did yesterday. Was sit there on a beautiful, what a time. That's what a better way to spend a Sunday other than maybe NFL football, or on the August 2nd, when we're going to have the I think the Louisville Alabama game is the second. There's a couple games, they're spread out, but LSU Miami on the 2nd. It's going to be fun, but sitting and watching sports on a Sunday afternoon, there's something really better than that. And yesterday was really nice watching Tiger and seeing those guys do all that, do their thing out in St. Louis at the PGA Championship, the final major of the year this year in golf. And we're actually gonna have Ryder Cup too. So if we're gonna get we're gonna get a golf podcast on here, at least maybe by the next time the majors roll around on the GSMC Podcast Network. All right, into college stuff. As this is a time where we think about the NFL preseason, and then we realize, they don't have a preseason in college football. That's kind of weird. Don't you think they deserve to have one? Their college kids, they're 18, 19, 20 through 23-year-olds. Some older, obviously. There's always skewing older, but on these teams, and they could use it a game, maybe a warm-up game. I know they have spring ball and such like that, but there's no preseason for these teams, and I can get it. I get it. Obviously, the NCAA doesn't want more head-to-head match. They really just we'll save the body blows for actual games that matter. And there's not as many guys fighting for jobs, paying jobs. Either you're going to have a scholarship or you're not. If you're a walk-on, you're probably going to get that's going to be decided either in spring ball or during this time in fall practice. So you can kind of narrow it down. It's different roster sizes and stuff like that. I don't know if they're really as NFL. You have to cut it down to 53 guys. College, I think it's not really, there's probably a much bigger number than that if there is a cap, but it's probably much bigger than that, as there's always the scholarship guys as well. All right, so we're going to focus on the Big Ten here a little bit as we we talked about kind of storylines going into the school year, going into the season. Last week we did talk about a lot of different storylines regarding, how is Jim Harbaugh going to come in with a new quarterback, and how he's going to take advantage of Shea Patterson? Obviously, the elephant in the room down in Alabama we talked about a lot. Urban Meyer situation, we kind of put that on the back burner because we're going to let that kind of just play out as it goes. The committee that was the panel that was formed to do that but big investigation into Coach Meyer and his conduct back on those days, it's tough, and they have to do their own thing, and I'm not really going to address it until they come out with their findings. And we've already speculated enough, and I've given my 2 cents on Urban and what should happen with him. But that he'll get his due, and we'll find out about it as soon as everybody else does, and we'll give our comments on it when that happens. So going back to the more lighter side of things with the Big Ten, you can call it quote unquote preseason. It's fall practice. What's the 13th? We're 2 weeks away from games. We're 2 weeks away from Michigan and Notre Dame, and I think that's the only team that's the only big, huge matchup. I know we're going to go over some important conference games in the Big 12, and in the Big 10, as well as around the conferences. We're looking at some of these big games. If we did some picks for Week 1 games, we can do some picks for these ones as well. As these are the big ones coming up for the Big Ten as well. as the fact that you have the Big East, Big Ten East versus the Big Ten West, and I've gotten my comments on how Iowa, their schedule looks a lot easier than Wisconsin, and then Wisconsin's schedule doesn't seem that difficult either, honestly, especially for a team that came off an undefeated season until obviously they lost in the Big Ten championship game, but an undefeated regular season. And where they basically just walked through. I mean, you should look at here's the power rankings for the teams in the Big Ten really quickly by ESPN. Ohio State, they're in the West. They're in the East. Wisconsin's in the West. Penn State East. Michigan State East. Michigan East. Northwestern, Iowa, Nebraska are in the West. And then you have Purdue is in the West, and Indiana, Minnesota. Indiana and Minnesota is in the East. Or in the West, and then Indiana and Maryland are in the East. So I mean, it evens out with the little cupcake teams at the bottom there, like Maryland. I mean, they're having their own issues. We'll probably have to talk about that and address that around the third segment. We'll get to the stuff regarding Maryland and the issues surrounding them. It's, of course, it all comes out 2 weeks before school starts. Before everything in 3 weeks or a month if you're Urban Meyer. But now you thought Urban Meyer, obviously domestic violence is terrible and it's inexcusable, and this Urban Meyer stuff will be figured out, and he'll get, like I said, he'll get what he's due. But then you get this news from Maryland where it all stems from a student and a player passing away, dying. He died from a heat stroke, and it was hot outside, and he was made to run 110-yard wind sprints, and was obviously, reading from the transcripts of the ESPN. I don't want to call it a dossier, but it's the ESPN reports who were the first outlet to report this, and then set everything in motion regarding the suspensions and everything. But just kind of touching on this issue from University of Maryland and their football program, and DJ Dirken, the head coach, and their strength and conditioning coach as well, being put on administrative leave or whatever they're calling that, the PC word for suspension, for being bad, basically, and treating kids the wrong way. Use of profanity and degrading language and all this stuff. It's very commonplace in sports, but when it's getting to a point where you're having kids speak out, and you're having obviously players get overworked and have to have health issues, and God forbid somebody dying on in your program like that, I think that sparks some investigative necessity. There you go. There's a necessity for some investigative action. There you go. I'm trying to articulate here, but this is crazy. We'll get through this. We're going to really break it down in the third segment here, because unfortunately it is college football. It is very relevant. It's something that probably happens, unfortunately, in other places, where you have coaches get a little overboard or use degrading language, and there's a line. Believe me, there's a line. Being an athlete myself, there's something where you kind of just brush it off and you don't worry about it. It's just part of the commonplace of being in this environment, athletic environment like this, with lots of strong male personalities. But no, this is different. This is a different line, and we're going to address it coming up here in the show. So at the end of the segment, we just gave you the power rankings for these Big Ten games. So going back over to the football side of this stuff, we're going to cover some of these. We're going to talk about these games and the storylines coming up with them in the next segment. So before we do that, we want to take a little look at these Heisman hopefuls. Obviously, we talk about Jonathan Taylor a lot at Wisconsin. Shea Patterson, honestly, don't forget about him. Trace McSorley at Penn State. Brian Lewerke at Michigan State. And then obviously Ohio State. They're obviously figuring themselves out right now. I think the product on the field eventually will reign supreme. And for Urban Meyer, we'll get into I don't want to speculate on Urban Meyer. If it is what it is, they're going to bring in Bob Stoops. They're not going to bring in Bob Stoops. They're going to let Coach Day finish it up or something like that. They have the talent on the field. They're going to be fine this year, at least this year. regarding their performance. At least Ohio State, they probably figured themselves out as they have very good players, and working their way up to a new quarterback, probably being Dwayne Haskins. I would doubt. I mean, Tate Martell is still in the conversation, but Dwayne Haskins is probably the guy at Ohio State, and we'll see who their coach is going to be come in the next few weeks. All right, we'll come back after the break, and we'll cover those. We'll look at those games that I wanted to highlight for the Big Ten schedule, as well as the picks for them accordingly. All right, everybody, stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast on a Monday today here, as we're going to go over these games for the Big Ten, and you're looking at them kind of just from a standpoint of, what games stand out to us, what games are going to matter the most, obviously, to the implications on these teams specifically, and what games we want to watch. Obviously, what are the big marquee matchups for this season. All right, so let's get right to it. As the first one, obviously, we like to look at. We don't want to just pull everybody out of the water, but the big game of the year always is the game at the end of the season between Michigan and Ohio State. I think it's going to have the most implications of any game probably this season in the Big Ten, because it's going to be two teams that are really vying for a spot in the Big Ten championship game out of the Big Ten East, as well as being in a spot where they could possibly get in that large berth into the college football playoff, because of the fact that you're going to have probably down years again from the Pac-12, where you might not have a team that's going to be qualifying for it, and you're not going to have it. And the same thing from the Big 12 this year, I think, with Oklahoma probably not quite getting to that level that everybody thought they were going to be at. So we're probably going to have, or there's going to be a definite possibility that we're going to have two teams from the Big Ten make it to the college football playoff. I mean, honestly, it's due. It's time for it. I think there's probably multiple teams that think that they have either been snubbed out of the Big Ten. We had last year was Ohio State. The year before that was probably Penn State. We've had Ohio State a couple. Ohio State didn't make it as a 4 seed and won the national championship out of that position just a few years ago, but this is definitely a year where we're going to have either they're going to beat up on each other and they're going to knock each other all out, or let's say, we're going to look at these games really quick. So say Ohio State beats Michigan, but Michigan beat Michigan State, and Michigan State beat Ohio State, and it all kind of goes back and forth, and they all end up with one win. One loss, and one ends up with one win or something like that. So it all gets kind of figured out as we go along here in this season. But the big one always is going to be Michigan and Ohio State. Plain and simple. Michigan, Ohio State. End of the season, November 24th from Ohio State in Columbus, as they're going to be hopefully playing undefeated. But like I said, they could always, beat up on each other. It kind of sometimes can work out that way with these division teams. They're going to beat each other up, or Penn State wins one game, or Penn State beats Michigan State, and Michigan State beats Michigan, but Michigan beats Ohio State, or all the other way around. You never know. Or they all can end up with one loss and kind of muddle up that Big Ten and muddle up the big CFP scenario. And we had last year where we thought the bill of the ball was going to be Miami. They're rolling in undefeated. They're going all guys Pitt in front of them. They're going to roll into the ACC championship game undefeated. Nope, they lose to Pitt. They lose to lose to Clemson badly, and then they lose their bowl game, which is just, sucky at the least. But it is what it is. All right, going back to the Big Ten stuff. Another game before this. This could be where we have two hiccup games for the Michigan State, for Ohio State and for Michigan. One of them, the Ohio State one, is going to be at Penn State September 29th. As of course, ramifications always are going to be found from different things, and found from strength of schedule, road wins. So this would obviously be a huge feather in the cap for Ohio State and whoever is leading them at this time to get past the Penn State team from Beaver Stadium. In front of all those crazy screaming fans, likely would be a whiteout there for that game. Of course, as taking a little trip over the border can sometimes be difficult for the Buckeyes. As Penn State don't mess around. Those fans, they don't mess around with their home football games. Next one, October 13th, is the possible hiccup for Michigan, as they have a couple different ones on their schedule, obviously against Michigan State as well. They play Wisconsin at home, so this is one of the tougher road games for Wisconsin, as they have to venture to Ann Arbor on October 13th to play Michigan at the Big House. And this is another prove me game. Prove. I can say it. I'm going to kick out over myself with my stutter or whatever it is going to be, but they needed to prove to everybody and to the nation and to the College Football Playoff Committee that they can beat a team like Wisconsin at home. A team that was undefeated last year, Wisconsin, a team that has a lot of returning starters this year, or at least on the offense this year. This was like Jonathan Taylor and Alex Hornibrook coming back to play for the Badgers, but like I said, this is Paul Chryst, and then Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, should prove your superiority in this conference, please, and take care of this team at home, and please send them packing, because I want Wisconsin to lose Northwestern this year, and I want them to lose Michigan this year. And honestly, if they could lose to Nebraska too, that'd be great, because I'm tired of this overhyping this Wisconsin team. And of course, right when I say that, ESPN comes out with this big expose. Oh, this is Wisconsin year. They can do it. They can get to the College Football Playoff, and they're finally going to get a berth. I don't know. They got another easier, even though they went undefeated last year. I know I talked about their schedule being a little more difficult than it was in the year previous, which it is, a little more difficult at the slightest. Where you have Iowa still having an easier schedule than them. But, looking at Wisconsin's schedule, as we seemingly do every week here, we like to look at Wisconsin's schedule, because I cannot remember every time the order of the games, and who they play on the road and who they play at home. They play, Iowa at home. Okay, so they have to go to Michigan, go to Northwestern, and go to Penn State. Yeah. A little more difficult than last year, you think? Those are three very difficult road games. They actually have to play in Iowa as well, and I think they're all alternating weekends. So they play BYU at home, then they go to Iowa, then they come back home for Nebraska, then they go to Michigan, they come back home for Illinois, and they go to Northwestern, they come back home for Rutgers, and they go to Penn State. They do have a couple cupcake games there in between. Basically, Rutgers and Illinois are cupcake games in the conference. In between those two toughies between Northwestern and Penn State. So, yeah, they could lose all those games, honestly. But if they do want to win, if Penn State, if they want to get into the CFP, the thing is, that's why they're talking about it on ESPN, because this schedule lines up to be something that they could work with, where it's like, okay, yeah, we have the schedule now, and now we need to take advantage of this tougher schedule. It's going to be stronger to the College Football Playoff Committee. If we could prove that we could beat Michigan in the Big House, we could prove that we could beat Northwestern in Evanston in a tough one up there. Usually, October 27th in Evanston, right on the shores of Lake Michigan. Hopefully you better be hoping it's a sunny day, because if it's not, it's going to be cold. Probably be cold anyways. And then you got to prove that you can beat a Penn State team at Beaver Stadium. So they're going to play two games this year in the matter of a month. about a month apart from each other in two of the biggest stadiums in the country. I know Wisconsin Stadium is not a slouch either, but the Big House is the Big House, and Beaver Stadium is Beaver Stadium, and there's a lot of people in there, and they're all against you, except for your little student section. But this is a prove me year. And the thing is, the ESPN's right. If they can prove that they can win these games on the road, everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. They don't want to get caught up at that second to last game of the year. That Purdue game just screams out like that looks just like the maybe it says the P logo, but the letter P, but that looks just like the Pitt Panthers game again for Miami last year, where if Wisconsin miraculously gets through all these games and beats Michigan and beats Northwestern and beats Penn State, and they just trip up against Purdue on the road on probably an early morning game on November 17th before they play with Minnesota at home, which they should be just fine. That's that's probably like that's the rivalry game, right? Where they do the Paul Bunyan's axe is the trophy for that one. It's always a fun week in college football. I love doing that week because rivalry week. There's so many rivalries. Sometimes they spread it over 2 weeks. We have rivalry games both the last week of the year and the second to last week of the year. Obviously, big ones in the Big Ten with the big game in between Ohio State and Michigan. This one is a big one. And then around the country, you have obviously the Iron Bowl, the Egg Bowl, the Apple Cup. Didn't we talk about this a couple days ago? The Rumble in the Rockies. That's the best one, isn't it? It's called the Rumble. I'm pretty sure it's the Rumble in the Rockies. Utah and Colorado. That's a great name. And then you have I think the Dust Up in the Desert. That one's kind of not my favorite. And then obviously the big game from I think it's going to be in Cal this year, or it's the Cal Stanford, whatever you want to say. All right, back to the Big Ten. We have a few more minutes left as I was going on my Wisconsin rant right there for a little bit. But this is actually true. If they get through these games, they have, like I said, they have alternating weeks where they go home away, home away, home away. And those away games are Michigan, Northwestern, and Penn State. And if they can get through that gauntlet right there, they could be fine. But the thing is, Iowa, they ain't got a gauntlet. They have their schedule is very simple. Their tough games are all at home. All right, especially even the one against Wisconsin, that's at home too. So actually, Wisconsin has 4 road games in a row. If you want to say Iowa would be a tough little test on the road as well. So I mean, I think it would be for Wisconsin if they can prove that they can win that. That'd be good for their feather in their cap going into the next couple of weeks. The next one will be Michigan, I think, on the road. Not the very next week, but the week after. All right, in the Big Ten schedule, Michigan, Penn State, October 13th is a big one. Obviously, these are kind of the little brothers. Obviously, you have Ohio State being the big brother to Penn State and Michigan being the big brother to Michigan State. But both these teams could play spoiler as they have very good rosters themselves. This is a year of greatness in the Big Ten, I think, where you have Penn State's up with a good quarterback, Michigan State's up with a good quarterback. I think at October 13th at Beaver Stadium, hopefully is good weather where these two quarterbacks can show off their talents. Of course, last year when the game was over in East Lansing in Michigan, it was a 3.5 hour weather delay. So I mean, we'll see if the weather is a little more permitting when it's in Pennsylvania, but you never know up there in those kind of conditions. And then the final game that I wanted to point out is Nebraska at Michigan. That's September 22nd, so it's actually not very far away. It's going to be, I think, week 3 of the season, as obviously after that week 1 trip to Notre Dame, Michigan will be quite either up or down, as they're going to have, I think, a pretty simple non-conference game in between that Notre Dame game and the Nebraska game. Obviously, it's going to be a first big test, as this is going to be the first trip for Scott Frost to the Big House, as they will host the Cornhuskers. I wouldn't be surprised, because it'd be a very Michigan thing to do. It'd be a very, very underwhelming Michigan thing to do. But Nebraska's not ready yet. They're not really doing anything this year. It's the first year for Scott Frost. He's going to have some turnover in his program for sure. But if they go and watch them waltz into the Big House and beat Michigan. So I mean, Michigan has Notre Dame, and they have Western Michigan at home. It's SMU at home, and then the Nebraska game. So I mean, they should be fine against Nebraska, but I would not be shocked. I'd be a little bit surprised, a little teeny bit, but not like, oh my gosh. I'd be like, okay, yeah, I can see that happening. That's a very Jim Harbaugh thing to do. Especially if they lose that game in Notre Dame. They could be down their luck a little bit, but obviously if they lose that game in Notre Dame, they have to run the table if they want to try to have a chance to get into the college football playoff, basically, because that would be a bad loss. It'd be a loss against a good team. All right. That'll wrap it up for this segment. We'll come back and do a little bit more talk covering the stuff from Maryland. Just wanted to give you little quotes, little stuff from the investigation, as well as the reports from ESPN. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast on a Monday today here, as we're going to talk about, we'll talk about Scott Frost in a little bit here, but quickly, just the Maryland thing is just unfortunate. It's an unfortunate next chapter of unfortunate things to happen from college football, from the NCAA and the Big Ten, actually kind of taking on the nose, I guess, right here, where they have greatness on one side and Scott Frost and the rock star that he is in Nebraska, and the fact that he doesn't really want to be in the spotlight as much, but he wants to focus on football, which is great. And then you have two other coaches on the other side of the conference who are not in such a good area, and they're in hot water is one thing to say. You could think of all the different cliches you want, but when push comes to shove, you have to really look at the actual things that happened here. Obviously, at Ohio State, you're dealing with a coach who has history of domestic violence, and a wife who is now speaking out on it, and a coach who was involved in, whether you want to call it a cover-up or you want to call it a systematic, or I want to call it a program-wide just ignorance kind of situation where they didn't even talk to her during their initial investigation in 2015. So if Urban Meyer did all of his due diligence and passed it along the way he was supposed to, and taught and handled Zach Smith the way he was supposed to, whether he should have fired him or not back in 2009 or back in 2015, yeah, probably should have done that. I mean, it's a wide receivers coach, for goodness sakes, really. What's your allegiance here, Coach Meyer? And you get the wife to recant or to not to pull away her charges in 2009. It's not the best look. It's not the best look. It isn't. And yeah, you lied at media day, straight up, just lied at media day. I don't want to call it, oh, I failed, I wasn't prepared, blah, 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 whatever. I don't care. You lied. You said 3 separate statements, and they all were lies to the media on July 24th, and you had a lawyer drop a statement to recant those lies and try and damage control the best you can, and you're going to be at the will of the judgment of your 6-person panel that was put into action last week. So, and we'll see what happens with that. The next thing up is DJ Dirken and his staff at Maryland, and DJ Dirken has been there for, this is actually, I think he was hired in December of 2015. Hired Rick Court, the head strength and conditioning coach, in January 2016. Soon after he was hired, so about a month after he was hired, Court had previously been a strength and conditioning coach at Mississippi State. Gets hired at Maryland, And then, of course, we know what happens with the offensive lineman and Jordan McNair back in May of this year, May 29th of this year. Jordan McNair is hospitalized after showing signs of heat stroke and exhaustion after, of course, he was put through 110-yard wind sprints and had difficulty finishing it. They found that he had a 106-degree body temperature when he was taken to the hospital. And then, of course, when this is evaluating, it said that he did not finish his runs on his own strength. And then, of course, he was evaluated at the football facilities, and then EMTs were called when a quote unquote male patient with a seizure, and then he was transported to Washington Adventist Hospital for that. And then he died 14 days later, or 15 days later, on June 13th, at the age of 19. The cause of death has not officially been released, but ESPN did learn that heat stroke was the cause of death for that young man. That's just the last thing, the absolute last thing that you want to hear. We're supposed to be excited going into this next new season of college football, and you have coaches and strength and conditioning coaches and people getting involved in things that are just, and we're getting dragged into this now with this news coming out. And of course, we want to hear about it. It's public knowledge. It's good reporting by ESPN. Well, hopefully we're going to find out the quality of the reporting. I'm not going to, I think ESPN, their pedigree, I'm confident in saying that this is not something that just made up out of thin air. Like a student has died. A athlete has died. He died 2 weeks after he suffered a heat stroke and had seizures after going through very, very strenuous workouts and spiked 106-degree fever. So, yeah, that's an issue, and that's a problem that needs to be addressed. And the university has addressed it and has put certain officials on leave, including the coach DJ Dirken and coach and the strength and conditioning coordinator Rick Court as well. And then, of course, that's not enough. That's not enough. Just a player dying. That's not enough. You have more players, and you have other coaches and people around the community, around the former people who have been in the organization, come out and say that this is a systemic issue at this university, this program. Yes, we talked about at the beginning of the show how derogatory terms and degrading terms and ways to yell at kids and things like that. I don't know. I've had a share of it. I'm not saying it's anywhere near the level that we had at Maryland, which is the whole point here. Where I understand, yes, okay, there's coaches have some sort of ways to, I don't want to say the word motivation is very, I don't know, that's suspect at this point. I don't want to call it that, but that's what the whole point is, I think, is trying, get players to do things that the coach wants them to do. And if the coach is pissed, then they're going to start swearing and they're going to start saying nasty things. And it got to a point at Maryland where it was like commonplace. It wasn't if a player messed up and you're going to yell at him. It's a commonplace. Like somebody's going to get in your face. Somebody's going to yell at you. They showed pictures from the university of these guys getting in these guys' faces, and they're yelling. They're telling them just the worst things possible. I tell people, that's why this is what happened. Oh, it's normal in school. It's normal in sports. Coaches use profanity. They say degrading stuff all the time. Well, yeah, there's a line. There's a line. And you'll know what it is. There isn't a defined line written in any rule book or any coaching manual or any how to do this, how to do that kind of thing. But there's a social norm, even in a college campus and even in a football program in the college level that has to be achieved. And that was not achieved at the University of Maryland because of these reports coming out of culture of bullying led by the strength and conditioning coach, Court, toxic coaching culture. I mean, there's, I don't know. That's not how you play football. I know it's a nasty ground and pound game. Just that is not the spirit of the game that we love as a country. That we love at the different levels, whether it's the NFL, college, high school, Pop Warner, flag football. We love the sport for a reason, and that's not the reason. It's the absolute epitome of the other side. The other side of this, not the reason. And what Coach Dirken and Coach Skort did at University of Maryland is absolutely almost unforgivable. And if we do have more news coming out that there was a direct correlation between the death of Mr. McNair and just his family's reaction and everything, if it comes out that this has a direct correlation, then is there going to be criminal charges? Are we going to have circumstantial stuff come out? Oh, he's an athlete. This is just part of it. No, there's looking at people. There's also scare tactics. What if there was an assistant in that program that saw Jordan McNair struggling and wanted to have him stop and take a breather or get back to a more comfortable position where he's obviously struggling, can't finish these workouts. What if you see him and you want to do something and you have a head coach who doesn't let you? No. He's got to keep going. These coaches, it's power. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And he's head coaches. I know that's something you say with like old tyrannical kings. That's the analogy you would say. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why our president. That's why there's 3 branches in our government. So nobody has absolute power because it corrupts absolutely. Whether there was a lack of oversight or scare tactics led the way, but Rick Court and DJ Dirken had absolute power seemingly in that program, and it corrupted them absolutely. And it led to this, and it led to a toxic coaching culture. It led to players leaving the university, players not enjoying their time. This is collegiate sports are to have fun. The point is to have fun, to enjoy yourself, to grow as a young man, to grow amongst your peers, amongst your brethren, and to have a mentor. That's why you have all these legendary coaches get so adored and loved and everything. And then you have just the absolute opposite side, the flip side of it. We saw it at Rice, wasn't it Rutgers, with the basketball coach flinging basketballs at his players and abusing them in unexcusable ways. And we're going to see it again. We're seeing it again here. And I mean, obviously, I don't know what I hope. I want to say I hope I don't see more news come out regarding Jordan McNair's death and how it points to the university. But honestly, some little small piece of me wants to say, they need to. I want to find out that they really that they did it, and they're going to get their due diligence, and we're going to have if we're going to have criminal charges drawn up or whatever's going to happen. But there was a death at hand, and you cannot take that lightly. And the fact that now ESPN's finished their report, and that's why we're just hearing about it now in August, even though obviously we heard about the death of Jordan McNair back when it happened in June. But ESPN did a very, very thorough investigation, a lot of interviews, a lot of hard work done by their teams, and they found out that this is toxic, just absolutely toxic, absolutely unexcusable, and something that you can't have anywhere in this country, at any football program, at any time, anywhere. Not even at the University of Maryland, not even at the smallest school in the smallest state in the smallest county. I don't care. Smallest high school, 7-man football. I don't care. We don't care. It's unexcusable. Country, media, college football community, unacceptable. And that's what everybody thinks too. I mean, it's unacceptable. And of course, and now we have the president of Maryland, Wallace D. Lowe, came out in a tweet on August 11th, which was on Saturday, and I'll read this for you. As this is what he says, quoted: I am profoundly disturbed by the media reports of intimidating conduct by Maryland football coaches and staff. Today, AD Damian Edmonds has placed head football coach DJ Dirken on administrative leave while a comprehensive examination is conducted. And there's a link to the actual press release and update on Maryland football after that, attached to that statement as well. So Evans, the AD, in his statement said, in quotes, "I'm extremely concerned by the allegation of unacceptable behaviors by members of all football staff detailed in recent media reports." The university, of course, is committed to the investigation in the program as well. So This is now we're getting similar footing. I know it's a different story, but abuse is abuse, and whether it's a coach on a wife or a coach on his own players or a strength and coach on his own players, abuse is abuse, and it's unexcusable in any sense of the word. And I'm going over my time here, but this is just it's honestly kind of dumbfounding. You have universities do internal investigations on themselves, and you think that president, but I mean, everything's fine. We're just going along. This guy's been here for 3 years. Now it's having the issue. I mean, it took ESPN to do it took somebody to die, number one. And then it took ESPN to, that's suspicious how that guy died. Let's do an investigation and do a full journalistic report on this. And then maybe the university will wake up. That's my only thing is these stuff. I don't want this stuff coming out years later, even months later. I don't need ESPN to have to do their nosying around, digging. These universities need to figure themselves out and do some investigating on their own selves before the media calls to action. I mean, this whole media call to action. Okay, we'll do it now. Maryland says after they find out about these allegations. You living in a broom cupboard? You just letting coach be coach. Just coach. He's going to do whatever he wants. I'm sure there had to be something, unless there was some sort of scarlet letter situation where the first one that talks is going to get blacklisted, or some sort of blackball kind of situation where these players are being scare tactics into not saying anything. And that's even worse. And we'll hopefully find out about that as well in the future. All right, we'll come back after the break and finish up the show, and we'll do some talk on Scott Frost and how he is kind of accepting the praise and all the limelight, but doesn't really want it in the truest of form and in the truest sense of the word. All right, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast. We're going to finish up the show quickly with a little shorter ending segment here for you, as we're going to talk a little bit about Scott Frost and send you off for your Monday. As you know, that was a little heavy segment for me last time. I was a little it just makes you shake your head. It make you sad. It can make you angry, make you confused. It make you disappointed in your country, disappointed in your, I don't know, the culture of our sporting, of sports, of football, makes you think about a lot of different things, and makes you put things in perspective. And it's like, these are kids, 19 years old. Really? It's just, it's tough. And I want to kind of just be quiet for a second in respect to Jordan McNair as he passed away. So just give me a second here, and we'll take a moment of silence for Jordan McNair. Just hold on. All right, thank you guys. All right. In the more lighter side, we have some things to talk about on the end of the show here, as Scott Frost is coming into his first season at Nebraska, coming off of a undefeated year at UCF, after turning that program literally 180 degrees in the right direction, as he'll look to take a storied program at Nebraska's who had some great success in their years there. And Lincoln, of course, is there definitely been a powerhouse in college football at some in the past, and Scott Frost becoming the rock star that he is at Nebraska, shying away a little bit from the spotlight is going to be too expected, of course, from a guy like that. So he's definitely reluctant, but he's definitely up to the challenge because he was given quite the schedule this year coming into his first season because it's just tough. And of course, he knows what it is. He knows what it's like in Nebraska. He was the guy there. He was the old quarterback. He was a national championship winner. This is a guy who's been around a lot of positivity and a lot of success in his life, and obviously getting his recruits in there and getting them on the same page and getting Nebraska's pedigree under their belt and instilled into their routines and their lives is going to be a key for them coming into the season. I know it's just talking about one coach and then, of course, going into another coach. You could look at the disparity, and of course, you're always going to think, "Oh, what's the secrets in this program?" All right, and it's not every program. Yes, of course, if there is something that's going to be uncovered, it likely will happen. It's the social media age where nothing is safe. Nothing is safe at all. So looking at Scott Frost, obviously has the big game with Michigan on September 22nd to start off his. What a game! What a game to start off your Big Ten schedule for the first time ever as a head coach for Nebraska. You have to go to the Big House and play Jim Harbaugh, who's been underwhelming in his time, we know, at Michigan. But he's going to have a little bit of fun little matchup for those two guys. And they'll have Purdue at home. You have to go to Wisconsin. They've back-to-back at Wisconsin, at Northwestern, back-to-back. Then you get Minnesota at home. That'll be an interesting one. You go at Ohio State before you come home for Illinois and Michigan State, and then you go to Iowa. So they got to play. That's a rough one. So they got to play Michigan State, Ohio State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, and Michigan this year. Those teams are all going to be very good, and they're all 10-win teams last year. So good luck, Scott Frost, and Godspeed as he goes into his first season. But I think that he's going to be a guy who's probably going to take what you can get with him with the media availability and how much he's going to talk and he's going to speak out. Honestly, he's pretty similar to kind of a Nick Saban. Doesn't probably love the media, but he goes and does what he has to do, and does what he's supposed to do as what is required as a head coach, and that's probably what's going to happen. Assistant coach for the Cornhuskers, of course, was like there was a chance for him to speak in front of some people, and he's like, I don't want to do this, and we kind of just blocked him in so he could be a normal person. As he was, of course, always is very recognizable around town. Coach, everybody wants a little piece of Coach, and then of course you have other coaches who don't get as noticed and stuff like that. So he's known to pull the cap down over his eyes to be a little more incognito around Lincoln, of course. But Scott Frost told ESPN.com that he says, quote, I think it speaks to the passion of the Nebraska fan base. I don't think that there are many places where they can even approach what they've got at Nebraska. They're around every day. They're such good people, and that is the pleasure to meet everybody who comes up to us and just wants a second of our time. So yeah, he understands. He gets it. It's a Midwest. Not everybody, but everybody's generally friendly. They love their Cornhuskers. They love Nebraska, and they got to love their new head coach. As he's going to be definitely a little knight in shining armor for them on the sidelines this year, and will maybe surprise us. You never know. I think this is definitely not a year to evaluate him overall. You got to give him multiple years, but especially with this schedule in the Big Ten, he'll have some tests, but it'll be fun. All right, that'll wrap it up for the show today, guys. We'll come back on Wednesday and do another edition of the college football show for you. If you want to listen to more football stuff, stay. Just wait a little bit. Depending on what time of the day you're listening to this one, but Jesse will have his show. The GSMC Football Podcast again. We'll have another edition of the show later on this afternoon, or if you are listening to this on Tuesday, then it's already there. So go look at it. As you'll find a couple GSMC ones. So mine is the one that says college on it. Usually I have some sort of college related thing in the title line, and then Jesse's more NFL angled as they get closer and closer to their season, getting through week 2 now of the preseason upcoming. So, all right, everybody have a good Monday, good start to your week. I know school's starting a lot, especially here. I don't know, here it's really early. In California, we have school starting today. I know some people usually start till after Labor Day or whatever it is, but they skew our summers really early here because it gets so freaking hot in the summertime. So we have most of May off, and then go May, June, and then July, and you go back mid-August. So that's fun time for the kidlins who are back at school. All right, back on Wednesday. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.